Not if you like it, but is he going to be able to get the support that he needs from Republicans?
Okay. I like Bernie just fine.
Last night was the New Hampshire Democratic debate, and I'm going to break it down. So for me, this was one of the better debates that I've seen. It rivals the December debate, which I thought was the best debate so far. This may top that. I don't know. It's kind of hard to judge based on memory, but this was a great debate. The moderators actually allowed the candidates to speak, and the questions largely were substantive. Now, the debate may have started off, the first 20 minutes of the debate was really all about attacking Bernie Sanders. But once Bernie was able to flip everything around on them, it just went on from there. And this is, I may as well just spoil it now. This was Bernie's best debate. He had an incredible performance here. And comparing it to Pete Buttigieg, who right now, I guess you could say is the number 2 in the race since he is neck and neck with Bernie in Iowa, Buttigieg had his worst debate. So this breakdown is really going to be focused on these two candidates. But I am going to give you kind of my breakdown of the ranking of who performed best in the debate at the end of this video. So let me just show you the lineup here. You got Andrew Yang, Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and Tom Steyer. So the first clip, let's get to Bernie Sanders finally discussing his electability case.
The State of the Union, he said socialism destroys nations. He's never going to let socialism destroy American health care. And before the Super Bowl, he joked with Sean Hannity about your honeymoon in Moscow. Those hits are going to keep coming if you're the nominee. Why shouldn't Democrats be worried?
Because Donald Trump lies all the time. Doesn't matter what Donald Trump says. It's a sad state of affairs. It really is. People say terrible things about Joey, has ugly, disgusting things about Elizabeth, about Amy, about anybody else who is up here. But I think, George, that at the end of the day, the way we defeat Donald Trump, and everybody up here, by the way, is united. No matter who wins this damn thing, we're all going to stand together to defeat Donald Trump. I believe that the way we beat Trump is by having the largest voter turnout in the history of this country. And that is appealing to working class people who have given up on the political process because they don't believe that anybody is hearing their pain, perceiving their pain, feeling their pain. And we got to bring young people into the political process. I'm very proud that in Iowa, we won the popular vote by 6,000 votes. What was most significant is we increased voter turnout for young people under 29 by over 30%. We do that nationally, we're going to defeat Donald Trump.
So Bernie Sanders finally made his electability case. How often on my channel do I discuss this? How Bernie Sanders is the most electable candidate by far, and it's not even close, because he appeals to young people, because he appeals to independents, because he appeals to working class people that historically stay home and don't vote. So the people that voted in 2016 are going to come out regardless and vote for the Democratic nominee because they want to vote against Donald Trump. The people you need to bring out in 2020 are the people that don't normally vote and the people that did not come out in 2016. Young people, progressive independents, working class voters. That's the Bernie Sanders base. That's why he's the most electable. And he touches on a point there from Iowa that I want to share this Pramila Jayapal tweet that relates to it. Most interesting detail of the Iowa caucuses. While overall turnout stagnated, number of voters under 25 years increased 65%, and Bernie Sanders got more of those voters than the next 3 candidates combined. How we win, expand electorate, pay attention to base. So this is the Bernie Sanders argument in practice. He was able to bring out more young people in Iowa than Barack Obama did in 2008. Bernie Sanders is the most electable candidate on this stage, and it's not even close. And that isn't even to mention, I have so during my live stream on Friday, I discussed how Bernie Sanders won in Iowa because of the marginalized communities that they reached out to. So the South Sudanese community and Latinos in Iowa also overwhelmingly voted for Bernie Sanders in the Iowa caucuses. Again, showing you Bernie has not only just a youth turnout, but has a very diverse base of people that he will be able to bring out in a general election against Donald Trump. Now, Democratic voters, look, I think it's obvious that when looking at the electability case that Bernie Sanders is the most electable. But for a long time, because of the way the mainstream media has misinformed people, a lot of people didn't see that. But that is beginning to change. So this very recent poll that came out today, actually, on Saturday from CNN, shows this. Which Democrat has the best chance to win the general election? Bernie Sanders now leads with 29%. Joe Biden drops to 25%. Pete Buttigieg is much lower there at 14%. Warren at 5%. Bloomberg at 3%. Klobuchar at 2%. So Bernie Sanders jumped 9 points in just 2 weeks. So people are finally getting the message that, yes, in fact, Bernie Sanders is not only electable, but the most electable candidate in this race. Now, let me get to, actually, this is ABC's Jonathan Karl reacting to Bernie's performance at the debate.
I got to say, Bernie Sanders is getting better and better at this as well, I think. What Bernie Sanders does is he takes the hit, and he took the hits. I mean, for a while, he was the one taking all the shots. He takes the hits, and he pivots, and he puts it right at Donald Trump. He acted like a front runner in that line.
And he doesn't change his message ever.
At all. And that line at the beginning, we're going to support whoever wins this damn thing. I mean, he, made that pitch for unity, took all the shots, didn't hit back, pivoted right to Donald Trump.
So, Jonathan Karl, I got to say, that was great commentary. It is super rare to see accurate commentary about Bernie Sanders on cable news or network television, and this is accurate. Bernie Sanders, during this debate, not only was able to make his case, his electability case, but also focused on Donald Trump and attacked Donald Trump in a way that really shows you that Bernie Sanders is a leader. So I want to show you this clip here where Bernie's going after Donald Trump.
Along with Elizabeth and Amy, we sat for 2 weeks listening to the impeachment process. And here's what I think the horror and the danger of what happened was: not only the acquittal of Trump, who in fact committed impeachable offenses and obstructed Congress, it is the precedent that it set. The precedent that it set. And what that precedent is about now is, in the future, you're going to have presidents who say, hey, Governor, you want highway money? You better support me, or you're not going to get it, because I am the president. I can do anything I want. Hey, Congress, you want to investigate me? Don't be ridiculous. Who cares about the Congress? Who cares about the separation of powers? Who cares about the Constitution of the president? I'm the president of the United States. I have all of the power, and I'm able to intimidate members of my own party. The saddest aspect of this whole thing is you have Republicans in the Senate who knew better. They knew that Donald Trump is a crook. They knew that Donald Trump is a cheat. But they didn't have the guts, with the exception of Romney, to vote against him. That is a sad day.
That was an incredible minute and a half. That was an amazing moment. And I'm not someone who focuses all that much on Donald Trump, because I think it's just kind of obvious. Donald Trump is a criminal. All the evidence shows us that. How many times do we really have to go over, like, who else is there to convince? If you don't know that by now, if you're still supporting Donald Trump, then I'm sorry, I think you're a lost cause. I mean, maybe at some point people in your lives can get through to you, but I won't be able to get through to you as a stranger. So there's no point in me talking to people that are still mesmerized by Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders here looked like President Sanders. This was a man who was commanding the room, speaking truth to power, and doing it in a way that represents everybody. I mean, recognize the moment you are in. You have the opportunity here to elect somebody in Bernie Sanders that has a 40-year record of fighting for the same thing, fighting for people, is authentic, and is supported only by the grassroots. No corporate money. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. take it from somebody who doesn't live in your country. Take it from somebody who, as an outsider, I've seen politicians come and go, and the vast majority of them are fake. You know that. I know that. Bernie Sanders is authentic. He's authentic, and he actually cares about people. He fights for people and has fought for people his entire career. Now, contrast that to Pete Buttigieg. So, Pete Buttigieg, this was really the first time that he was actually challenged by a moderator on stage. So I'm going to play this 3-minute clip here just to give you the full context and judge for yourself.
I want to turn now to criminal justice. Mayor Buttigieg, under your leadership as mayor, a black resident in South Bend, Indiana, was 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than a white resident. Now, that racial disparity is higher than the rest of the state. In fact, it's higher than the rest of the nation, and that disparity increased in South Bend after you took office. When talking about the problem on national terms, you've called it, quote, evidence of systemic racism. But you were mayor for 8 years, so weren't you, in effect, the head of the system? And how do you explain that increase in black arrests under your leadership?
Well, the reality is, on my watch, drug arrests in South Bend were lower than the national average, and specifically to marijuana, lower than in Indiana. But there is no question that systemic racism has penetrated to every level of our system, and my city was not immune. I took a lot of heat for discussing systemic racism with my own police department. But we've got to confront the fact that there is no escaping how this is part of all of our policies. Earlier, we were talking about opioids, and thankfully, America has come to a better understanding about the fact that opioid addiction is best understood as a medical problem. But there were a lot of people, including a lot of African-American activists in my community, who have made the very good point. It's great that everybody's so enlightened about drug policy now when it comes to opioids, but where were you when it came to marijuana? Where were you when it came to the crack epidemic in the 1990s? That is one of the reasons why I am calling for us as a country to take up those reforms that end incarceration as a response to possession and make sure that we legalize marijuana, and when we do it retroactively with expungements to correct the harm done in so many cases of incarceration, disproportionately of black and brown Americans, where the incarceration did far more harm than the offense it was intended to deal with. I want to go back to the original question, though. How do you explain the increase in black arrests in South Bend under your leadership for marijuana possession? And again, the overall rate was lower. No, there was an increase. The year before you were in office, it was lower. Once you became in office in 2012, that number went up. In 2018, the last year that we have a record for, that number was still up. Yep. And one of the strategies that our community adopted was to target when there were cases where there was gun violence and gang violence, which was slaughtering so many in our community. Burying teenagers, disproportionately black teenagers. We adopted a strategy that said that drug enforcement would be targeted in cases where there was a connection to the most violent group or gang connected to a murder. These things are all connected, but that's the point. So are all of the things that need to change in order for us to prevent violence and remove the effects of systemic racism, not just from criminal justice, but from our economy, from health, from housing, and from our democracy itself. Senator Warren, is that a substantial answer from Mayor Buttigieg?
No. You have to own up to the facts.
All right. Now, I know that was kind of long. Maybe some of you sped through it, but I wanted to give you the full context there because it shows you what Pete Buttigieg does. When he's finally asked a serious question about his record, he just goes on and on and on about something else. Hopes that you as the moderator will forget about it and just move on because of time restraints or whatever. But Lindsay Davis here did her job, saw right through him, and pressed him on the question 2 or 3 more times because he wasn't answering it. And it shows you how weak Buttigieg is. Donald Trump would completely wipe the floor with him. I mean, this is a guy, and again, it's not about, like, Trump's not going to win Democratic voters over. No one's worried about that. It's about suppressing the base. So when I talk about, like, electability, it's about who will you bring out. Right now, Pete Buttigieg, even though he's the youngest candidate in the race, he has very low support from young people. The vast majority of young people support Bernie Sanders, and he has almost zero support from people of color. So he is just not electable. He's not going to bring out the voters that are needed to defeat Donald Trump. And you saw this here, him trying to skirt the question and then eventually getting called on it. And then his only response finally is, yep. And then he moves on. Like, just because he can't say anything. He doesn't have a good record. And this is something that Donald Trump would be able to easily harp on and suppress the Democratic base. And also, I guess I should give Warren some credit here for her good reaction. But let's be fair. Whoever the moderator called on with that question afterward could have easily answered it the same way Warren did and had an applause line because of it. She just happened to call Elizabeth Warren and she got the applause line. So, yeah, whatever. Chris Christie now, I want to show you. So I've noticed twice now. Once last week, Chris Christie actually had a great take on how Bloomberg would be a horrible candidate for Democrats because the Democratic base would not come out for him. I should actually do a video on that. But Chris Christie, again, after this debate, had another great take, this time on Pete Buttigieg and how weak he would be.
I think the moment that could be a foreshadowing for the future is when Mayor Pete was up there outright lying about his record on African-American arrests on marijuana. And Lindsay Davis of ABC challenged him more than any candidate on that stage challenged him tonight. And you saw the look on his face. He looked like a deer in the headlights. And let me tell you, he thinks Lindsay Davis is hard. If he ever gets on the same stage with Donald Trump, it's going to be a whole different story who will call him on those things. And I think these other candidates better get serious about calling Mayor Pete on the record in South Bend. And so I think it was a missed opportunity for the other candidates. Elizabeth Warren gave him a little bit of a shot on that, but not nearly enough time spent on it. But what I saw more than anything else, as someone who's been a candidate on that stage, that look in his eyes when she came back at him and didn't take his first line of baloney was very telling about what kind of candidate he may be able to be.
He's exactly right. He's exactly right. Now, when it comes to actual policy, I never agree with Chris Christie on anything. But he understands politics. He's actually a politically savvy person. He gets it. He understands the optics. And he knows that Donald Trump would absolutely wallop Pete Buttigieg. Now, sort of to his point here, there were other candidates on stage, or one or two other candidates on stage actually going after Pete Buttigieg. One of them was Bernie Sanders. So watch Bernie here nail Pete on his billionaire donors.
What we have got to do is have a nation in which we not only overturn Citizens United, we move to public funding of elections. In terms of money in politics, all right? Our campaign, and I am enormously proud of this, unlike some of the folks up here, I don't have 40 billionaires, Pete, contributing to my campaign, coming from the pharmaceutical industry, coming from Wall Street and all the big money interests. What we do have is we have now over 6 million contributions from 1.5 million people, averaging $18.50 a contribution. That is unprecedented in the history of American politics. If we want to change America, you're not going to do it by electing candidates who are going out to rich people's homes begging for money. The way we're going to do it is build a mass movement of working people who are prepared to stand up, not take money from these billionaires, not take money from Wall Street, but stand up to the drug companies in Wall Street. And if you want to be part of that political revolution, BernieSanders.com.
What a great moment. Voters are tired of corrupt politicians. They're tired of politicians saying one thing and doing something else. And really the root of all of that, or at least the root of most of that, is money in politics. Big money in politics. You have almost every other candidate here on stage taking money from billionaires, from corporations, from all these special interests. And whatever they're saying on stage really doesn't matter, because the people that are actually going to be calling the shots are the ones that are giving them these massive campaign contributions. But in the case of Bernie Sanders, he's 100% grassroots funded. And I just did a recent story on this. In January alone, he raised $25 million, which is more money in 1 month than Warren, Buttigieg, or Biden raised over the course of 3 months in the third quarter. So Bernie raised more money in 1 month than those other candidates did over the course of 3 months. He has the grassroots movement behind him. He has the support to take him till the end. And this is the perfect contrast to Donald Trump, who pretends to be authentic, pretends to care about people, but is actually all about himself. And to be honest, he's really not all that good at hiding it either. So in some ways you could say that, yes, Donald Trump is authentic, because I think it should be obvious to most people that Donald Trump is incredibly self-absorbed. So he doesn't care about people. Trump doesn't care about people. And he's funded, again, by these big money donors. He pretends to be self-funded, but he's not. I mean, look at his cabinet. He has people from Goldman Sachs in his cabinet. Like, that's not going to be the Bernie Sanders administration. Bernie Sanders actually has a campaign of and for the people. That is the perfect contrast to Donald Trump in a general election. Now, one more clip here that stood out to me, because Bernie's personality isn't always on display. At least I should say it isn't always obvious to most people that Bernie, I think, is very personable and is well liked amongst his peers, especially when you have liars like Hillary Clinton out there saying no one likes him, because Hillary Clinton's comments here were brought up and were completely annihilated in the course of like 30 seconds. Watch.
The Democratic Party's last presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton, has criticized Senator Bernie Sanders' record in the Senate, saying nobody likes him, nobody wants to work with him, he got nothing done. Senator Klobuchar, you serve with Senator Sanders in the Senate. Is he going to be able to get the support? Not if you like him, but is he going to be able to get the support that he needs from Republicans?
Bernie just fine. We actually have worked together on a number of things, including pharmaceuticals. We actually had a vote late at night one time, Klobuchar-Sanders amendment, to bring in less.
No.
It was not.
How can you not love that moment? Whether it's Biden coming over and hugging Sanders, or whether it's Amy Klobuchar saying that she likes Sanders and that they actually work together on a piece of legislation. I mean, this is the whole narrative that Hillary Clinton is trying to develop here has completely backfired. Anytime she has tried to attack Bernie Sanders publicly, Bernie has essentially broken records when it comes to grassroots fundraising. All his supporters and new supporters come in to back Bernie Sanders. And you see, even among people who don't agree with him politically, are moderates. Claim Amy Klobuchar and Joe Biden have different perspective on politics, yet they still like Bernie Sanders. And it's obvious when you see that interaction on stage. And in addition to that, they worked with him and got things done. Now, let me give you my rankings. So I didn't show many clips of anybody else, because honestly, this race is getting down to the wire. It really is right now. Bernie, Buttigieg, Biden, maybe Bloomberg, if Bloomberg buys enough ads for himself and somehow puts himself into this race and potentially is in the next debate. Now that the DNC changed the rules to help Bloomberg, that's a whole different story. But so my focus here was really on Bernie and Pete because of how Iowa turned out. That said, just to be fair in terms of who else performed well in this debate, so Bernie Sanders I think clearly had the best performance. Tom Steyer I put at number 2, which is not something I think I would ever have thought that I would say in the future. But Tom Steyer, even though he's a billionaire, he appears to be cozying up to the Bernie Sanders positions. So, I mean, it really looked like on stage at a number of points that Tom Steyer, at some point in the future when he drops out, is going to back Bernie Sanders. It looked that way to me anyways. But Tom Steyer here was actually very emotive. He showed that he actually appeared to care about many of these issues. So I think Tom Steyer appeared fairly well in this debate. Andrew Yang I put at number 3, even though Andrew Yang I do think kind of stumbled a little bit in some of his responses, but it was kind of refreshing to see him on stage. And there were moments where Yang stepped on like Pete Buttigieg lines. So like Pete Buttigieg would be, going on with his ridiculous language about saying something. Again, Pete Buttigieg, most of what he says is completely empty, but he'll go on and on and on. And then Andrew Yang comes in right afterwards and just completely steps on Buttigieg. And that happened a number of times, so I really appreciated it. So putting Andrew Yang in third place here. And he's also somebody who it appears he may endorse Bernie Sanders. It does look like he's going to drop out soon. There's a recent story saying Andrew Yang has fired a number of his top political staffer or top staffers on the campaign. So it does look like he's going to drop out soon. And before Iowa, Yang was saying that he wouldn't be surprised if many of his supporters during the Iowa caucus process went to Bernie Sanders. Again, maybe hinting that he knows there's some crossover there. I put Elizabeth Warren at number 4. She had an all right performance, but honestly, largely forgettable. I'm not sure if Warren, I'm not sure how Warren sees herself in this race right now, because third place in Iowa is not great. She's not looking so great in New Hampshire right now. It really looks like she's losing her support to everybody else, basically. She's losing some support to Buttigieg, losing support to Bernie, losing some support to Amy Klobuchar even. So I'm not sure how much longer she's going to be in this race, but that said, she gave some solid responses, so she's kind of middle of the pack here. Amy Klobuchar, I put number 5. Again, I don't really agree with her on anything, so it's hard for me to think that she ever does really well. But with that said, her performance was fine. I mean, you see her there interacting with Bernie Sanders. The thing with Amy Klobuchar, when it comes to the moderate wing of these candidates, she is definitely a little more authentic than I think the other moderates are. She's definitely better than Biden, definitely better than Buttigieg. So I think she had an all right performance in this debate. Joe Biden, number 6 here. He maintained, I guess. Joe Biden never has a great performance. Let's just be honest. I mean, a great performance for Joe Biden is just getting through a full sentence. I mean, I feel bad for the guy sometimes because it really looks like they're just wheeling him out on stage and he's just not ready for this. This is definitely like politics at this level is kind of in his past. And I think the population at large and Democratic voters at large have moved past Joe Biden. So the only reason I put him at number 6 here is because Pete Buttigieg is number 7. So Pete Buttigieg did the worst. He got completely annihilated. You saw the moderator there. Any little criticism. I mean, and that's just one issue. There are many issues that moderators can bring up and other candidates can and should bring up when it comes to Pete Buttigieg. If he maintains maintains as a contender in this race. But you saw him basically fall apart over one hard question, I guess hard, about his history. So Pete Buttigieg did not look good at all in this debate, and it really showed me that, and I hope it was obvious to everyone, that he would completely fall apart against Donald Trump. So overall, I enjoyed this debate thoroughly. If you haven't watched the full thing, I do suggest you watch the debate if you are really into this race and you're concerned about the candidates or you want to see. I mean, I guess if you've made your mind up already, there's really no point to watch this debate. But with that said, especially if you're thinking about Bernie Sanders but you're not sure yet, watch the debate. If you watch the full debate, judge for yourself. Don't take it from me. Watch the debate, see how Bernie does, and then I think you'll be impressed by his performance and just his 40-year fight and his authenticity in general.